Hello, 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 and welcome back to Alice Talks Football, and welcome back to another live Manchester United news, transfer news, and update show. Reports coming in that Manchester United have 150 million left to spend without getting into PSR issues this window. We will talk about that. They want to get Lamens and a midfielder with that. Could there be big money going on Baleba? Could there be a big late bid going on any midfielder? Reports breaking just now that Kobbie Mainoo is open to leaving Manchester United in the final week of the window. And I'm going to say this now. For me, selling Kobbie Mainoo is not what Manchester United is about. Kobbie Mainoo is an academy graduate. Kobbie Mainoo in that season under Ten Hag was unbelievable. He came third in the Golden Boy ranking. He was starting for England in a Euros final. He was man of the match against Manchester City. He was man of the match against Liverpool. He was the best player in the FA Cup final. Kobbie Mainoo is a generational talent, and I just feel that it's a huge red flag if we are looking to sell Mainoo rather than get the best out of him. I think that's a huge red flag. We're going to talk about the Mainoo situation. It worries me. I'm not going to lie. For me, the biggest red flag of Ruben Amorim is one, offensive contributions. We're not improving going forward. I think he's improved Euro. I think he's improved our defence a lot, Ruben Amorim, but offensively he's not improved us. And B, he doesn't know how to use Mainoo. Or he's saying, well, Mainoo can't play because Bruno's in Mainoo's possession. But Bruno was crap yesterday. I am Bruno's biggest fan. I will big up Bruno. I will respect Bruno. I will protect Bruno. But Bruno was crap yesterday. Mainoo should have gotten a minute. We'll talk about that. But obviously the 150 million United have left to spend on a midfielder. We're going to talk about that report. We're going to talk about that story. The system for me isn't good if it doesn't fit someone like Mainoo in. You adapt the system when you've got a talent like Mainoo to fit it. I generally believe that Mainoo, and I think people are forgetting what he did in that 23-24 season. I generally believe that Mainoo is such a good player that if your system doesn't fit Mainoo, then you need to change the system. That's what I strongly believe. Because people say Mainoo don't fit the system, but who fits the system? Who? Bruno doesn't fit the system. Mainoo doesn't fit the system. A guy who was meant to fit the system doesn't fit the system. Okay? I'm just saying we should. I don't think the midfield works, and I think we should change it. We will talk about that. Obviously, Marco Silva had come out and said, basically, we know how to play against Man United with the two in midfield. We just overload it. And every single rival was coming out saying they know how to play against United in midfield, which, again, worrying signs around the midfield. So we will talk about all of that as well. And Ruben Amorim, obviously, we're going to talk about him. Now, I'm going to give you my stance on Ruben Amorim. We drew to Fulham. We didn't lose. It was a good first half performance. It was a shocking second half performance. So far this season, we saw a good performance versus Arsenal and lost. We saw a good first half performance versus Fulham and drew. The second half performance versus Fulham was bad. Look, we're 2 games into this season. There's a lot of reactionariness. There's a lot of people crying, saying Amorim's rubbish. He's going to finish 15th. There's a lot of people upset. And look, Amorim last season, it was appalling. He's not brought himself a lot of time with fans this season because it was appalling last year, and he's had a lot of money spent. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's a bit of an overreaction after 2 games. Look, you know me. I've always said I have my doubts around Amorim. I've always said he's got 28 points in 29 games. He won 4 out of 26 games against current Premier League opposition. So, don't get me wrong, but this is the second game of the season versus Fulham, and it was a draw at Craven Cottage, which isn't an awful result. Yes, the second half was bad. Yes, he managed the second half badly. But we could go and beat Burnley 4-0 next week, and then we could go and get a result versus Chelsea and a result versus City, win 3 in a row, and all of a sudden the mindset will change around Amorim. So I think you've got to remember this is the second game of the season. We've had 1.5 good bits so far into the season and a bad half. While it was frustrating to feel a little bit like we were watching us from last season and that not a lot changed despite this money had been spent, it's the second game. And I see people crying and saying we need to get rid of Amorim already. And I just think, look, if we get to November, December time and we are 15th and we just don't look any better, we can have a genuine conversation about it, because we can say, look, it's 10, 12 games into the season and we aren't getting better. And of course it will take time for the new signings to gel, but he obviously didn't do enough in his first season to give us confidence in him to get that bit more time. But I don't think you can... Look, if you were Amorim out, you were Amorim out to begin with. If you saw the first season and just thought, no, I'm Amorim out, you have every right if you want to be Amorim in. You have every right if you want to be Amorim out. Do you know what I mean? But I think if you've seen that game and you've decided, I'm going to be Amorim out off that second half, I just think it's a little reactionary. Let's just see what happens. let's see in November, December. There might be a few poor games. I remember Arsenal lost their first 3 games of the season, then ended up finishing 4th, and there was a huge meltdown over Arteta. Things will take time to gel. Look, if we're 10, 12 games into Premier League season and we're sitting in 15th, 16th, this is when we will be having those kind of conversations. Some people think he should get a full season. Some people are like, let's just give him 10 games. 2 is way too early to judge. 2 is reactionary. Let's give him 10 to 12. That's sort of the mindset, in my opinion. Like, I wasn't a fan of what we saw. I thought Amorim didn't put a foot wrong versus Arsenal. I don't think you could give Amorim any blame for Arsenal. I do think Amorim got a lot wrong yesterday. I think he should have taken off Bruno, and I'm a big Bruno fan. But let's see. The window's still open. I'm not going to be screaming Amorim out or anything because we drew to Fulham, because it's the second game of the season. The window is still open. There's still times to change things, and the new signings will take time to bed. Look, if we are getting to the end of November and we're 16th, 17th in the league and we're having relegation level form again, then I'm going to be concerned. But it's the second game. It's the second game of the season. And it wasn't encouraging signs. And it was a very bad second half from Amorim. And it was very similar to last year. And it's easy to be negative. It's easy to be negative. Just remember, it's the second game of the season. This doesn't dictate our season. We had a good game versus Arsenal, we're unlucky. We had a good first half versus Fulham. Look, if Cunha had scored that chance, if Bruno had scored that penalty, and we'd gone in at half-time 2-0 up, we could have won that game 3-0. Let's say we won, the confidence would have been there. And if we had won that game 3-0 yesterday because we put our chances away in the first 20 minutes, we'd be having a completely different conversation right now. So I think there's those small things that we need to look into as well. But look, there's a lack of confidence. Amorim isn't getting us higher than 10th. I get why people feel that way. I 100% get why people feel that way. It's not encouraging. It's not encouraging. But I'm trying to think, look, you can't, the sample size is so small. Obviously, there's last season, but I'm trying to ignore last season because he didn't get any of his players in, and I'm fully trying to judge him off what I see this season. For me, the sample size is too small to jump to conclusions about how the season's going to go. The only thing I will say is Amorim lost his first 3 games as a manager playing a 4 at the back system, so changed to a 5 at the back system. If it's not working at a 5 at the back system at Man United, why doesn't he change back to a 4 at the back system? I sometimes feel like that. Do you think Delot was good? No. Delot was crap. Bruno was crap. Someone said Shaw was bad. I thought Shaw didn't put a foot wrong. I don't think Shaw did anything wrong. I think people just don't like Shaw. I actually thought Shaw was all right. Euro was probably our best player. Do you think we missed a trick not getting Thomas Frank? I don't really want to have these reactionary conversations. I will say this now. Amorim is the kind of guy where if he'd have taken over at Manchester City, it would have made sense. In the sense of Amorim is the kind of guy that shouldn't take over a bad team, but should take over a good team, because Amorim's system relies on a lot of quality to make it work, and Manchester City have a lot of quality, whereas at Manchester United we have a lack of quality, so there was a lot that needs to be done to make it work under Amorim. Thomas Frank is someone that he can take over a bad squad and make that bad squad better and get the best out of that bad squad. A little bit like Ten Hag did in his first season, but then couldn't do in his second and third season. How Ten Hag got the best out of us in his first season, but then tried to play his own way in second and third season, went wrong. And Ten Hag's talent ID was appalling. But Thomas Frank is someone that if you haven't given a mediocre squad, he will profile everyone correctly to get the best out of them. So I guess, the initial phase of a rebuild, someone like Thomas Frank that can get the best out of everyone, fair enough. But I'd say Amorim, I think if he took over in Manchester City, we'd be having a different conversation. I think Amorim needs that quality to win. And some people don't like that. Why does he need so much money to win? But we did have a severe lack of quality. Ten Hag, was 12th, 13th when we got sacked. It's one of those. If you was to replace Amorim, who would you go for? I'd go for Eddie Howe. Newcastle fans aren't going to like that. I tell you what, though, with the way, apparently, I don't know if it's true, there's apparently falling outs with Eddie Howe and those Saudi at the top of the club. So that's who I'd look at if we sacked Amorim. But I don't want to be having these conversations 2 games into the season, if I'm going to be honest. I think it's easy to be reactionary. I think had we won the Europa League, I feel like after 2 games, there wouldn't be such a negative mood. But I think because we finished 15th, it was so bad last season. Amorim's won 4 out of 26 games against current Premier League oppositions. We went a whole season without winning back-to-back games in a row. We've only scored 2 goals in our last 7 Premier League games. It's easy to be negative. It's easy to be reactionary because we've still got last season and what happened last season going in. But I'm just trying to separate last season and just say, look, this is where Amorim's time starts. because he's now got his signings. And so I'm just trying to separate this season to last season. I think because last season was so bad, he's not going to get the same amount of time fans would have given Ten Hag in his second season, because Ten Hag did quite well in his first season. But I'm just trying not to fall down this rabbit hole of it's all doom and gloom, because we could beat Burnley, we could beat City, we could beat Chelsea. I'm not saying we're going to win 3 games in a row, but if we do win our next 3 games in a row, we'll be sitting back thinking, oh, how reactionary we were versus Fulham. So yeah, I want to actually get into the news and the stories. Who was your man of the match yesterday? Probably Euro. I thought De Ligt bar the goal was actually quite good. I don't think Casemiro was bad. I don't think the midfield works, but I thought that we got a lot worse when Casemiro came off. Cunha had a very good first half, but was probably out of it the second half. Couldn't really get Mbeumo in the game. Yeah, Hincapie apparently is going to Arsenal, another defender for Arsenal. But let's talk about the Manchester United news. Let's talk about the stories in regards to United, and then we will discuss Amorim and yesterday's game. So, this has come from IndyCala, and you know me, I'm not someone to be quoting IndyCala, but they have got a few bits of information correct about Manchester United. And what they're coming out and saying is that United can spend 150 million without any PSR issues. They have the money available and ready to spend on midfielders. So they are suggesting that sources have told them that United could still spend another 150 million this summer. You know, obviously Lamens is one signing, and then the rest is going to go on to midfielders. Now, obviously, IndyCala take with a pinch of salt, even though David Ornstein gave them credit lately. They got a few things right, they take with a pinch of salt. But I believe this is correct. And you might be thinking, why can Man United spend 150 million? Because if we sell Garnacho, it's very much, if we sell Garnacho for 50 million pure profit, and we spend 150 million and we split it across 3 years, then the Garnacho sale covers that. So look, I don't know if we can spend 150 million without a Garnacho sale, but if we sell Garnacho, Højlund and Antony, we can definitely spend 150 million on a midfielder. Apparently, we have the money available and we're ready to spend on a midfielder. And the fact that we're even inquiring about Carlos Baleba and Adam Wharton, that we know would be £100 million players, I think we do have the money available. Man United have tricked us into thinking that they're broke this summer. They're now working on the bench for about 20 million quid. But the fact that we went in for Baleba knowing he'd be 100 million, the fact that we've looked at Adam Wharton knowing he'd be 100 million, says to me, well, United clearly have 100 million ready to spend on a midfielder, because they wouldn't have been doing all that work trying to get Baleba, because they knew he was going to be a £100 million player. Maybe Brighton said 150 and we're like, well, we're not doing that. But Man United have money for a midfielder. And the big question is, you know, Man United, you know, have a green light to spend potentially £150 million for the rest of the summer. The green light is there to potentially spend £150 million this summer in regards to PSR for the goalkeeper, for the midfielder, but will they deliver? That's the question. Will they deliver? Because delivering is Baleba, but Brighton have said not for sale. They've said Baleba had a bad game yesterday. I don't know if he's fully fit. Will they deliver? There's a green light to spend 150 million more this summer. Will we deliver? I don't know. Will we deliver Baleba? I don't know. I'd like to be a Baleba. I don't think we're going to get him. I don't think we're going to get Carlos Baleba, if I'm being totally honest. Thomas Frank has instantly turned Spurs around while doing less business. What is Amorim's excuse? I will say one thing. I think Thomas Frank inherited a better squad than Amorim. Tottenham had a lot of injury issues under Ange. Like, I'm going to say this now. Porro, Spence, Romero and Van der Ven and Vicario is a very good back five. Even under Ange, when they were conceding goals, that's a very good back five. So he's inherited a very good back five with stability. He's got a lot of good profiles in midfield. Like Sarr is a good player, Burford's a good player. Obviously, Palinha's come in. Bentancur's a good player. But I don't think the attack's great. He's got Kudus, which is a great signing, but he's getting the best out for Charlison, and Brennan Johnson is scoring goals. So I guess you can look at it in that way. But Thomas Frank is a manager that I said, back in November, Thomas Frank would get the best out of Man United. He would. Like, we all know that. He's the kind of manager that he looks at what you've got and tries to get the best out of what you've got, whereas Amorim has a system and wants elite level quality to make the system work. The thing is, if you get Amorim all the elite level quality that he needs, I think Amorim can make it work. I think Amorim could have an unbelievable side, but it will take more time with someone like Amorim, whereas a Thomas Frank, I think, is more guaranteed impact right away. And I think it just depends the approach that INEOS went for. I think Amorim can be a good manager. I think Amorim can succeed, but I think Thomas Frank, he could do a lot more with a lot less money. But what's his ceiling? Alice, regardless of the system, we lose the ball. There's no desire to get it back and get into our opponent's shirt to pressure them. At times, I liked how Cunha was very eager to get the ball and mount. What do you think of Ugarte? He's just a liability. He's just a liability. Like him coming on over Mainoo again. Look, Ugarte's good in the big games out of possession. He wants to win the ball back. He's got the dog on him. But on the ball, he's a liability, isn't he? Do you think Baleba changes everything? I don't think he changes everything, but I think he's someone that you could pair with Bruno or pair with Mainoo. I think Casemiro is actually a sound player, but his legs are gone. And I think we need those legs of Baleba, who's currently not fully fit. Wharton's cheaper than Baleba, but for me, Wharton is a Mainoo Bruno replacement. Baleba's a Casemiro, a guy replacement. Wharton is known for being good on the ball. But the problem is, Brighton said Baleba's not for sale. It obviously changes a lot. Alice, stop acting like Amorim took over a bunch of bums. He's been a terrible manager so far. He's been a bad manager so far, but also he took over a bad squad and a bad environment. And do you know what Amorim's done really well? Is kicking the bad eggs out and recruitment. The players he's getting out and the players he's getting in, big green flag from Amorim. He's done that really well. The players he had to work with in his first season were atrocious. He was also getting a lot wrong. But because I think, let's see what he does with quality players. If he gets a midfielder, Lemens, Cunha, Sesko and Buma, when we're sitting here come November and he's had 10, 12 games, and that's sort of time where you want to see things click and the performances are no different to last season, there's no excuse for that. But I'm trying to not judge him off last season and give him a fresh start this season and be fair. I'm trying to be fair. I like to be patient. I like to be fair. Look, Amorim hasn't done enough for me to sit here and say I'm going to give him a full season regardless, even if we finish 15th. No, not at all, because last season was appalling. But I'm not going to say after 2 games, it's over. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to be positive. I think Alex is correct. The squad needs more spent on it, but I want to see a much more improvement with what we currently have. Me too. We need a lot more to be spent, but I would have liked to see more signs of improvement. I thought we saw a lot of signs of improvements versus Arsenal, and I thought the first 20 minutes was phenomenal. And I thought the first half was all right. I think the second half just ruined it. And I think because the second half's the most recent, that's all we've got on our head. So this is why I'm trying not to be reactionary and saying, guys, we played 2 games and one and a half of them was good football. The other half was bad, but it's a draw at Craven Cottage. You're a good side. I'm trying not to be reactionary. I'm trying to look at it in that way. Baleba probably needs to sort his head out. Yeah, he wasn't great yesterday, but I don't know if he's fully fit. Amorim wasted quality players. Why spend so much on Sesko and have him on the bench? It's the second game of the season. He's only been in training 2 weeks. That's quite normal. If he had Sesko on the bench 10 games in, you then have questions over it. Like I have questions over Mainoo on the bench because he was good in pre-season. And actually, there's reports coming out about Kobbie Mainoo being unhappy at Manchester United and open to a move. So I obviously want to get into this. So this is, could be a bit of a clickbait reactionary story. It's one of those stories where he's not played the first 2 games of the season and journalists know that they could write something about him for clicks because they could do a bit of guesswork. So it could be a bit of a clickbait reactionary story. But this is what's come out. I'm just going to take a bit of water. Kobbie Mainoo would consider leaving Manchester United in the final weeks of the transfer window if the club receive a suitable offer. Obviously not what you want to read. Look, Kobbie doesn't fully suit the system. 100% get that, okay? But Kobbie is what Man United's about. I think we're forgetting it's Man United DNA. Our academy is what we're about. Selling Garnacho fine, he's a brat. Kobbie Mainoo, what he did under Ten Hag in that second season was phenomenal. What he did for England in the Euros, what he did in the FA Cup final was phenomenal. What he did against Liverpool, what he did against Wolves was absolutely effing phenomenal. Okay? Kobbie Mainoo for me, and we didn't see a lot of it last season, so people will go off last season and just change their opinion on him based off recency bias and forget what he did at 18 years of age, is an elite level talent. He's the most technically gifted player we have in this squad. He has a ridiculous ceiling, and he's the type of player that if we sold him, we'd be crying about it 2 years later. I'm convinced of it. And I strongly believe, and people will disagree with me on this, but Amorim needs to make it work for Kobbie. Kobbie Mainoo was meant to be the face of the rebuild. INEOS wanted Mainoo to be the face of the rebuild. He was that good. Amorim needs to learn how to use Kobbie. He needs to adapt to use someone like Kobbie. Because right now, Amorim is so intent on playing his system. And we're giving him all the players he wants to play a system. If we can give him a midfielder, we're giving him all the players he wants to play a system. And if the Amorim system's not working and we bring in Baleba, well, we'll be saying, well, clearly, the system isn't working. And do you want to back a system that just isn't working in the Premier League at Manchester United? Or do you want to adapt to get the best out of players like Kobbie Mainoo? And I just think, for me, I'd be fuming if we sell Kobbie Mainoo. I just think he's a player that if we... Look, I want Amorim to succeed. I want Amorim to make it work. I want Amorim's system to work. Cool, whatnot. Maybe Mainoo doesn't fully suit it. Maybe Bruno doesn't fully suit it. But if we sack Amorim in December and we sit there knowing that we sold Mainoo, we sold Rashford, we sold Garnacho. He was very valid to sell Rashford and Garnacho. I'm not saying he wasn't. But I'm saying if we sell Mainoo, Rashford, Garnacho, all of these young players, and then we go back to a manager that wants to play a 4-3-3, and the perfect player for that manager is a Mainoo, and he wants a direct winger that likes to hold out wide, we'll be sitting there thinking we literally just sold all these players that would have been perfect for this manager that we made in the academy. Like, that's the worry. That's the worry, Back Amorim, back his system. It can work. We've seen it's worked at Sporting. But to sell Mainoo, I wouldn't be a fan of. Like, some people don't rate Mainoo. Some people think he's not physically good enough. But I just think Mainoo in a midfield three, with his technical quality, with the fact that we can't keep the ball in midfield and we have to bypass the midfield and build up, should be a reason why Amorim should be playing Mainoo. Amorim's saying Kobbie's competing with Bruno as a wild comment. They're completely different players. For me, Mainoo needs to play. Okay, there's questions over fitness, physicality, of course. But, for me, I just think he deserves a chance. Our sentiments aren't looking great. What's Ugarte done to get on over Mainoo? And look, people say Fergie took 5 years, blah, 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 blah. Of course, Amorim deserves time. I'm not saying sack him after 2 games. I think he deserves time. But we also have to be realistic and say, it's a risk. If we're going to sell Mainoo, we're going to sell this player, we're going to sell that player, it's a massive risk if it doesn't work. That's what I'm saying. We can't blame him for wanting out. If he's behind Fernandes, he's not really going to get any minutes at all because Bruno's undroppable. He's the captain. Bruno should have been benched. Bruno shouldn't be undroppable, but he is undroppable. And for me, look, I look at this and I think, he needs someone like Baleba, Kobbie and Ugarte, limitations, Kobbie and Casemiro, lack of legs. He probably needs someone like an Ugarte to get the best out of him. Not Ugarte, someone like Baleba to get the best out of him. But it's worrying. It's worrying. For me, selling Mainoo isn't what Man United's about. I get he wasn't great last season. I get he doesn't fully suit the system, but I think we're being reactionary if you want to sell Mainoo. Yeah, selling Kobbie just isn't what the club's about. He was in the gym. He looked all right in pre-season. He was looking good. He's such a technically gifted player. Selling Garnacho, I'm not bothered about because, while I think there's a good player in Garnacho and I think he'll be very good for Chelsea, he's a brat and he's not as gifted as Mainoo. Mainoo has higher ceiling Garnacho. Mainoo is probably one of the highest ceiling players we've got. And I just think letting him go would be unforgivable. I think letting him go would be unforgivable. Look, I'm someone that, it's 2 games into the season. Let's not be reactionary. Mainoo could all of a sudden get a few games, play really well and have a really good season. We're 2 games in. We can't fully judge things after two games of the season. But to sell Mainoo, I'd be fuming. Ben Jacobs has just come out and said that Napoli in advanced talks to sign Højlund. It would be a loan with an obligation worth 40 million. There's talks coming out of Højlund leaving with a 40 million obligation to buy via Ben Jacobs. Arsenal obviously in for Piero Hincapié as well. So a few interesting reports coming out. Apparently Mainoo's open to a loan move. There's talk of United willing to loan Mainoo again. I don't like that with our build-up issues. I'd like Mainoo to stay. But with the current situation at the club, I think linking Mainoo away, it seems like easy journalism to get clicks. There might not be anything concrete in it. It could just be easy journalism to get clicks. But it's not what it's not what the club's about, selling players like Mainoo. This is not Manchester United. If you're a new manager coming to Man United and you want the fans to like you, you play to the academy players. And I said this, the player we should be building around is Mainoo. We're not selling. The fact that Amorim doesn't know how to use him, for me, is a red flag. And people might disagree with me on that. But I am very strongly against selling someone like Mainoo. I'm very strongly against it. He should have played. And I remember this report. This is a report that came out when INEOS took over. This was when INEOS took over. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is poised to make Kobbie Mainoo the face of the new Manchester United. Jim believes that Mainoo embodies the values and aspirations of Manchester United and is convinced that making him the face of the club will inspire a new generation of fans and players alike, while also boosting the club's public perception. The process will involve significant public relations and marketing efforts to showcase Mainoo's journey and rise within the England national team. Now, look, the source is a bit of a Wi-Fi password here, let's be totally honest, but I'm going to retweet that. All this talk in August, after the Euros 2024, after that phenomenal season Mainoo had, that he was going to be the face of the project, for literally 1 year later. In the space of a year, Mainoo's gone from being the face of the project to this. So, oh, we might sell him. I don't like that. Where's the plan? Where's the plan? Yeah. Man United DNA, while the academy has produced FL since 92. Well, that's completely wrong. Marcus Rashford is what in our top 10 top goal scorers. You know, Marcus Rashford's won many trophies. He got a 30-goal season with us. While it's been hit and miss with Marcus Rashford, a good season and bad seasons, overall, he had a good career at Manchester United. You know, McTominay had good moments. You know, bringing the, you know, for me, yes, we haven't won loads lately, but we've produced a lot of good academy talents. Whether they've succeeded at Man United or not, we've produced some incredible academy talents. And, you know, we regret selling them. Like James Garner, phenomenal for Everton. Alanga, doing really well at the moment. Alanga, James Garner, you know, they're just not getting the opportunities at Man United, or we're selling them, or we're so unstable. And I just think, you know, we look at James Garner doing well. We look at, you know, Alvaro Fernandez doing well at Madrid. Alanga doing well. And people will say blah, 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 blah. But Mainoo was a different level to all of those guys. Mainoo was a different level to all of those guys. Mainoo was a 1 in every 10-year talent like Pogba. Mainoo for me was the biggest academy talent we had since Pogba. A 1 in 10-year talent. You know, JJ Gabriel could be the next one to come along, and I just feel like we'd be silly to waste it. And also, midfield is so bad. What's Mainoo done to sit on the bench? Like, midfield is our biggest issue. MVP McTominay, 10th player Rashford. I mean, he wasn't for Man United. He was unbelievable last year, but he wasn't for Man United. Mainoo suits the system. It's just about getting a DM that can play alongside him and getting experienced D-line playmaker. I do think he'd work well with a Baleba. Yeah, so anyway, Marco Silva said this after the game. We know how to play with the 2 in the middle. We tried to overload with our 3 plus Alex. It was simple as that. Marco Silva was asked about playing against Man United, and Marco Silva basically said, it's really easy to play against Man United because we can just overload the 2 in the middle. Marco Silva, the Fulham manager, who's very good friends with Amorim, basically said, we all know how to play against Man United, just overload the midfield. You know, he's literally just saying, every manager keeps saying about Man United, well, they've got 2 in midfield, you overload it, it's crap, blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean? Like, every manager just says it. So fix it. Fix it, INEOS. Fix it, Amorim. Even Iwobi was saying after the game in his post-match interview, you know, we targeted the midfield. You know, we knew we would be able to get in behind their 2 midfielders. Say whatever you want. We'll keep struggling if we don't sign a good athletic midfielder this summer. And United Faithfuls was right. Alex Iwobi basically said we knew that we'd be able to get in behind their 2 midfielders. Marco Silva said we know that they play with 2 in the middle. We overload it. Like, the Fulham players just knew to target our midfield. Like, that is a red flag. That is a huge red flag. That every team's like, we'll just target the midfield. We'll just target the midfield. Like, let's be honest, it's a massive red flag. Apparently, Mainoo is going to play versus Grimsby on Wednesday, which will be good to see. But yeah, for me, I would be very fuming if we sold Mainoo. I'd be very fuming if we sold Mainoo. For me, I just think it would be silly. I just think the club aren't that stupid. I think Mainoo would outlast Amorim. And if Amorim gets his system together and we start getting results quick and Mainoo isn't a part of that, Mainoo will go. But if things are looking crap by December, I think Mainoo would outlast him. I do. I think I'd be fuming if we sold Mainoo. Like, I don't want to be negative, but I would be fuming. Napoli in advance talks to sign Højlund with a loan with a 40 million obligation is being discussed. Mainoo is open to leaving. Jadon Sancho just wants more money. Garnacho and Chelsea expected to happen. Arsenal went for Hinkeby. This is interesting as well. So yeah, lots of little reports going about, but I just wanted to talk about the fact that apparently we have 150 million to spend on Lebens and a midfielder before the end of the window without PSR issues. So there's the green light to spend 150 million right now without any PSR issues. So hopefully we go out and do that. Hopefully we deliver. If we've got 150 million to spend, make a push for Baleba. Go deliver, you know. Hopefully we don't sell Mainoo. Let's see what happens. But anyway, I just wanted to do a shorter live show to discuss the match yesterday. It was more of a discussion live show. It was more of a discussion live show than a news live show really today. You know, the two midfielders have to be athletic, 100%. But Mainoo is such a good player. Adapt the system, find a way to make it work. You know, Pep Guardiola had systems that were unbelievable for 2-3 years. And then he got found out, and then he's adapted his system. Pep's adapted his system 3-4 times while at Manchester City. But never in football does a manager play the exact same system for 20 years and get all that success. Jurgen Klopp had to adapt. Pep Guardiola's had to adapt in their prime. You know, Arteta's going to have to adapt because Arsenal get found out in the final third. You know, for me, Ruben Amorim has his system, he has his way of playing, but he can adapt it. He can make changes. Pep's gone from back fours to back fives. You know, and Postecoglou got sacked because he stuck to his system and would not change it and just thinks it's his system. If it doesn't work, nothing's going to work. Things like, for me, cool, you need this, you need that. But you can adapt, you can change things, you can make changes. This isn't the Portuguese league, this is the Premier League. You get found out a lot quicker here. And I think that's something that Amorim's got to consider. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching today's live show. Big up everybody tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.